Hey guys, it's two guys D&D, blah blah blah. It's been a while since I've done that intro. It's been too long. It's been what, maybe a good month and a bit since our last video.
Yeah, I think it's been around that.
You've been keeping up though, playing your games. You got, was it Lord of the Rings stuff, Middle Earth?
Yep.
Going on right now, as
Been
well
playing
as
weekly.
I think you have one other thing, right?
Nope, that ended.
Oh, the Sword of the Bells is finally done with.
It's on an extended break right now.
Oh. And I occasionally get the Western game in. Anyway,
yeah, everyone's hounding me.
It was funny. Like at the end of the third session, I said, join us again in a million months, and it was only like 6 or 9 or whatever it was.
Yeah,
wasn't too bad.
Yeah,
a lot less than a million, right? So I think today's video we're gonna go over a faction in Spire that I've been working on. I say been working on. It's been like a month since I actually found the time to sit and do some writing. So this, like the sort of main idea of this faction is that sort of a neutral, sort of bounty hunter type faction that goes around sort of debt collecting on people that haven't paid their their monthly cost of having their cyberware. So these people just go around, like, hack off somebody's cybernetic arm and just take it with them and get money for it. So I definitely want them, like, a really sort of... People are terrified of them. And let me share an image that...
Oh, yeah.
That's sort of like the... click on me. That's sort of the aesthetic I want to go for. And Tim, last time I shared this image, had a really cool idea for this hand that's missing. Was to have this like really cool sort of like hollow tech, kind of like Mass Effect if you played that game. Where it like creates this like hologram of a hand or something. Or some kind of weapon that can actually like affect the area around it. So maybe like they use this hand to like nullify somebody's cyber tech, like sort of a targeted EMP or something.
Yep.
To then collect it. And then have this drone sort of follow them around and like scan people to see if they've like paid up or something.
Yeah.
But let me... Oh. Stop. I got really confused for a second there because I've got my mouse. This picture's in a different monitor. So I put my mouse up to like stop the screen sharing, but realized it was in a different monitor entirely. Right. Oh boy, let's unclick off myself. There we go. So what immediately springs to mind when you saw that picture? Like any cool ideas?
Well, other than the picture itself being really cool, you know, I think one of the things that my eye was first drawn to was the fact that he was missing that left hand. It's kind of like, it sounds like that's what Tim did as well. And so he was already thinking, well, what goes there? And I don't know. It almost looked like something would attach and reattach stuff. I mean, I don't know how high tech things are. The Mass Effect thing is a lot more techy versus.
I mean, I'm not quite sure how techy I want to go with it. But yeah, I think maybe attachments might be quite cool. Like you'd attach like a gun there or something, or like some sort of circular saw blade or something.
Or maybe it's just maybe that picture itself is not like reminiscent of. I mean, maybe that's the average.
I think it would probably be quite a sort of like each of these bounty hunters is in their own sort of like individual, so like they get their own sort of reputation.
Right.
So like one of them might be like really sort of like bloodthirsty and quite sort of brutal in the way that he reclaims tech.
Well, you know what'd be really cool is to have like these repo guys, and I use guys in a loose term.
Yeah.
They could probably be women as well.
Oh, yeah.
Certain and other. But what'd be really cool is if they're almost impacted by the profession that they actually work in, you know. So they're after all these people that can't keep up the payments or pay for their cybernetics. But would it be something if these repo people actually end up replacing a lot of their own carbon body parts with these mechanical parts? So it almost like they have to keep going and doing repo work just to keep up with their own bills, because it's like this cycle.
Yeah.
You know, I want to get that next upgrade for my arm, but in order to do that, I really got to score all these other credits. But in order to score all these credits, I really got to bring in like three of these people. So I mean, it would almost be like this cruel irony that they're off repoing people, and but they themselves have to stay ahead of their own kind, because if they miss a payment, they're potentially going to face the same fate that they then do.
I like that.
So when I looked at that picture, that's what I thought. I thought, shit, did he just have an encounter with a fellow Reaper, and he had taken his hand because he hadn't paid.
He just really wants his hand back, so he's going to go like cut off like 10 other people's hands.
Right. Yeah, or maybe the hand that he had would malfunction. Maybe in the last job it got damaged, and to repair it would be so much that. I mean, I just really like that, because it already gives a character in that with a flaw, but but there's a lot of latitude that you can do within that flaw. You know. Is it someone that just does it just because of necessity and they hate themselves for it?
I'm sure you get like a big mix, like people that just really enjoy it, like those really like fucked up people who just enjoy what they do, like the psychopaths. I'm sure there's a lot of those, but there's also people that just want to pay their way in life.
Right.
There's sort of slightly crazy people who just love like chopping off their own hand and replacing it with a metal one.
Right. Exactly.
Big mixture. And so every perhaps they have sort of designated sectors, and they might occasionally encroach on each other to sort of make sure that everyone's paying their due. And
I look at it kind of like in fantasy role-playing games, how they have thieves guilds or these sort of collectives. So I would imagine these repo or reaper type folks, they have their own collective, and it's like a union or whatnot. And maybe there's a certain dues that you have to pay. And if you go to a different section of Spire,
there's a gentleman's agreement kind of between them, don't encroach on my territory, I won't encroach on yours, we each get paid. Nobody.
Or if you do, say you're tracking someone and they go into another sector that's not yours, the expectation, that gentleman's agreement, is you go and make contact with whoever's sector that is and say, hey, I'm going after this guy here. He owes money for his leg augmentation. And there's a certain, you have to give there's an expectation, you have to give a certain cut to them. But of course they could always say, no.
Yeah. If you've got if you're one of those sort of bigger guys or gals who are got a really bad reputation, then most people will, make sure to ask your permission before they do anything. But you could just walk into anybody else's sector and just take whatever you want because you're, so big and badass or something.
Right. Right. So you would have the ones that belong to a collective, and then you may have some freelance.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that kind of
just roam around the streets.
Yeah,
with this
but
big
they
droid like hulking behind them,
yeah.
just scanning like every single person for cybernetics that they haven't paid up on. And then it's
You know what I think would be cool too is there are different types of like droid. Like in that picture, I love the one that's there, but maybe there's other kinds too.
oh yeah,
You know, uh, and maybe that'd be great if you just kind of gave the framework to game masters and players, and then the game master and players sit down and they develop
oh
as
yeah. I
part
mean,
of
I
character
just
creation. Yeah,
what I will have in like a setting book will just be they have droids which do this, and like what else they can do is up to you.
yeah,
Maybe have some like kind of stat block which gives you an example of some like random weapons they can have or whatever they can do, or maybe like sort of a generator for generating a random one of these. Because
yeah.
random roll table is always great because even if you don't want to sort of randomly roll, you just pick off the table.
Yep. Yeah, and as long as there's like a formula to follow too, you know that you're gonna always achieve that balance.
Like mode of like movement, so
Yep.
flying, walking, or like tracked, like a really old fashioned, just like caterpillar track kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, or maybe it's just something that it's part of the cybernetics of the
or
Reaper
you could just
itself.
have a big augmented eye. Yeah, I've realized this setting is sort of slowly morphing into less cyberpunk, more sort of dystopian science fantasy. I guess I'd probably
Yeah.
like a very dark dystopian science fantasy.
Yeah.
Because cyberpunk is pretty hard to sort of pull off, I think. And the way that I'm sort of developing this world is it's sort of drifting away from that because I just don't. I've sort of lost the sort of. I found this way more interesting than sort of exploring corporations, and that's going to be there as well, but to a lesser extent.
Yeah, I think of like Blade Runner. I think there's one too. I can't remember. It's the guy that played Batman, Equilibrium or something like that. Where they have these perfect humans that are genetically created, but if you're not, then it's not good. Like and they're like the true like law keepers. They go around and their word is law, kind of a thing. Not a Judge Dredd type thing, but it's pretty good. There's Christian Bale in it, and it's pretty awesome.
Have a look at that. So, trying to think. That faction's like pretty well done. I don't think they actually need sort of a. I don't think they really need a name, like an actual proper name. Maybe just like collectively known as like the Repo Men.
Yeah.
Or just whatever. And then each of them have their own sort of individual name. Like one might be called like the Butcher or the Stalker or something generic.
Right, and I'm thinking they probably get these names based on either how they go about their work or how what other people come to call them. Based on that. Like if you have someone that's really dark and just always gets the job done and he doesn't care, he's like heartless. I could see someone like that called like the Reaper. Oh shit, man! You got the Reaper after you. You're done, man. No one gets away from him. He's like death. Kind of something like that.
Yep.
And but yeah, I think that's great. But I also see this as one of those jobs that they're probably always got stuff to do. It's always a lot easier to get that loan. It's so much harder to pay it off.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. So. Do you want to just build another random faction?
Yeah.
See, we got sort of lists that I wanted to sort of get through. With some like I just brainstormed a bunch of ideas a while ago. So we've got different sort of criminal gangs, like there's a bunch of biker gangs. There's various sort of corporations, crime syndicates. There's sort of like the Scrapper Association.
I don't. Have we done this yet? Have we talked about like what sort of law enforcement is
Law
there?
enforcement.
What kind of faction? Like
Well,
what are they? Private corporations kind of employ their own
yeah,
security forces.
I think it would be private. Perhaps it would be sort of like a generic private law enforcement, which is sort of only really goes after sort of like the big things. Like trying to take on these gangs is really pointless because they're as sort of well armed as there's certainly a lot more of them than the police force, and they're as well armed. But I think like each corporation would hire its own sort of private security firm.
Yeah.
But these private security firms would be like outfitted with like proper weaponry, like assault rifles. In some cases, like sort of like electronic, like androids, things like that. It could be a big mixture. And I imagine there would be some like patrolling the streets as well, but only in certain areas. Like a sort of
Right.
like zone around like each of the sort of corporations, like main.
I imagine the higher up you
Yeah.
get into Spire, the more order there is, or
Yeah.
at least semblance of order, versus if you're like further down, like below Spire.
Yeah, so I think it would be like a gradient from like totalitarian to anarchy.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
That's the sort of gradient, like down in the streets, down in like this sort of the in between space of Spire, like between the sort of upper city and the sort of scrap heap. There would just be this in between space of just tunnels and sort of catwalks, and like streets would only be like a few feet wide in some places. And there's like this only artificial light. Like down there, it's just total anarchy. It's kind of like Hive Worlds off 40K. I don't know if you played like Necromunda in the past.
No, never did. But so yeah, so there would be all sorts of types of nefarious gang types, because strength comes in numbers, right?
Yeah.
The loner's not going to survive in that sort of environment.
Yeah, that's why everybody is part of some criminal organization or is paying a criminal organization for protection.
Right.
But I think once you go like further up, it's slightly more legitimate, but a lot more corrupt, I guess.
Right.
There's still some like honor among thieves in the bottom, I imagine.
Exactly. So when I think of gangs, a lot of times things that bring gangs together is that common purpose. Because even gangs have their sense of like what their rules and whatnot are. Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I would see is like, so you have certain type, I think of like the Tong or the Yakuza, the Italian mafia, the Russian mob, so you would have cultural gangs. And then again, you and I always struggle with the naming part.
Yes, I can't name anything to save my life.
It's like literally I get paralysis every time I got to name something. I can come up with these great ideas like, oh, this is going to be so great. Oh, shoot, what am I going to call that?
Yeah. Generally rely on other people. Bark is a great one for naming things. That man could just spew out a name like just anything. Yeah. I imagine they'd be like.
So let's talk about a couple cultures and see.
A couple of like crime cultures.
Yeah.
So there's got to be one that's like no drugs. Like the sort of seems a bit more like higher up in the morality scale than other crime families. Like sure, murder's fine, racketeering, robbery, but no drugs. Keep the streets clean that way. It's like if you get caught like dealing drugs in their like little sector of their territory, then you just get beaten up and killed.
Yeah.
So there's always that, like, all the other sort of families are thinking, oh, there's this market here which isn't being tapped into. So we're going to deal with these guys that don't allow drugs on their streets. So there's always that sort of conflict between the other gangs.
Right. So if you're moving drugs, or if you're trying to sell drugs, I mean, you'd have that conflict between those two types of criminal factions.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of limit the amount of criminal factions as well, to keep things simple. Like maybe 2 or 3 really big crime families.
Right. Yeah, so I see. So that one would be kind of that's kind of when I think of that, Harry, I think of like organized crime here in the United States when it first started. Before the whole ban on alcohol and everything, they're about money laundering and stuff like that. I mean, they're terrible, but once they saw that they could make money by like setting up these speakeasies and running
Yeah.
moonshine and stuff, they're like, hey, we're going to do that. So they're definitely a crime of opportunity. And then the same thing happened with drugs and whatnot. Like they really fought against drugs for the longest time. They didn't want that. They didn't see that as an honorable way to make money. Now, these are the same people that literally wouldn't think twice to put a bullet in a guy's head that they were just having dinner with the guy's wife.
Yeah, I just had an idea. Like, because Spire is layered, perhaps in like the upper levels, this totalitarian state, not well, it's not really a state, but this conglomeration of corporations controlling everything, have banned drugs on the upper levels as much as they can control. So I imagine the lower levels don't have this kind of system of law. So drugs are manufactured down this lower level, but in between is this family which doesn't like drugs. So it's trying to having, these families underneath are trying to get their product up above to make money, but they've got to get through the territory of this other family which hates drugs.
And the corporations above actually see the benefit of this crime organization because they're like, hey, they're doing most of the work for us. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. You can hit Barker up for a name.
Yeah, Barker, just name these guys for me. Yeah.
What would these guys be called? I think of something like really just simple. Like I don't know what role religion's going to play in Spire, but I would see them taking this really. It would almost be like this ironic. Their name would almost be ironic in some fashion, or kind of a what's the word I'm looking for here? Almost like having a double meaning. Because you would say one thing, but I mean, obviously they're not like good guys, and I imagine they're pretty brutal to anybody that they.
Yeah, definitely. They're already pretty brutal, but when it comes to drugs, for whatever reason, maybe the boss of the family's daughter or son died from drugs or something, and or their wife or husband or something like that. I don't know who's in charge.
I would see them having the same kind of zealotry of like the ones for the Inquisition, or when they would do witch trials and whatnot. So maybe having that same sort of zeal, but they need to have so they would have their own sense of honor that would say, the other stuff is business. This isn't business. Drugs aren't business. They just destroy families, destroy order. So,
yeah, I like that. I like that. And I'm trying to think. I always like the sort of intrigue between certain corporations and crime families. There's definitely got to be some sort of pharmaceutical creating corporation, which is maybe actually selling a lot of these drugs to the lower families, and that's sort of that tie between they know it's illegal, but they're doing it because it makes a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they're using these crime families to distribute everything.
Right. I mean, I think that there's some good adventure hooks that folks can have by using a faction like that. They're approached by this lieutenant from one of the guys, one of the upper bosses in this faction, all on the down low because his daughter is hooked on some street drug, yet to be named. And he knows that that's a death sentence if anybody else in his organization finds out about that. So, so finding out who hooked his daughter, blah, 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 something like that is a good, I mean, I get all kinds of ideas bouncing around in my head. I'm like, that'd be great.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing I want. I don't want to just sort of lay out everything for you in a setting document. I just want to basically just give a brief thing, and then you can just take and run with any idea you can just grab off this.
I really like it when I'm reading a supplement, and it'll give say a faction, and then they'll give 2 or 3 hey, here are some some ideas.
Yeah,
Just
like example
it kind of gives you a sense of like, okay, how they might look, how they might operate, and then you go, oh, and then you can make your own from that. It's really cool.
Yeah, maybe also like because I don't want to have that many factions. Maybe some sort of like relationships. Like there's these factions don't get along. These two kind of tolerate each other. That kind of thing.
I think it's always helpful, I think, when people could see that kind of a flow chart that says, you know, are they friendly, neutral, animosity? You know, where do they fall on the how do we get along thing? I imagine, based on what I know so far about your setting, Harry, there's probably going to be a lot that are neutral, and then within each of those organizations or cultures, there's going to be the people that go in either direction based on their own experiences.
And what's great about the sort of neutral relationships is you can take those as a GM and think, right, how am I going to screw that up to like cause conflict?
Right.
Maybe you have your players start as one and they do something to another faction, maybe on accident, and it caused some sort of criminal war between these factions. That kind of thing. Just having everything sort of like set in stone is good in some cases because it gives that sort of backdrop, but you also want to be able to sort of change without sort of messing things up too much. So I like the sort of tone of this sort of almost religious sort of anti-drug crime family. I haven't really sort of thought about a religion at all.
Well, I think you have to remember too, it's dystopian, so we don't our definition of religion may not be anything close to what theirs is going to be. You know, they may not worship some like ultra powerful beings. They may worship like a tech. They may worship, you know, like quote unquote living gods. I think of like 40K.
Yeah.
You know, the Emperor is the living god.
Some of the sort of like original ideas I had of Spire were these like genetically superior beings like living up in the upper echelons of Spire. You know, they're like perfect skin, perfect hair, perfect jaw lines.
Yeah, like Gattaca. Is that the name of the movie? Gattaca, where they're perfectly engineered. And if you are, you lived up in the, I mean, that just, you can Google search anything in sci-fi. There's so many movies out there that are done kind of like that. You know what? A movie I saw, and I don't know if you've seen it. I can't remember what it was called, but it's basically, it's two worlds. And I think of Spire when I think of this movie, because Spire really is two worlds. There's the lower and then there's the upper. And the thing is, if you lived in the upper part of this world, you had it made. But if you were in the lower, you were like the untouchables or whatever. But the whole movie is about this guy that he gives himself this shot that makes it look like so that he can fit in there. And it's a pretty good story. So I think of that. Yeah. So I mean, that's just something else too. Is like, you know, I just see people in Spire having to pass through these scanners. And you're just categorized by how you genetically scan. And like you need special passes to go in certain areas of the upper parts of Spire. Like,
like these scanners you just put your hand on, they prick your finger, tell you if you're worthy or not, and then don't let you through or whatever.
Based on your genetic code.
Yeah, it's completely sort of like totalitarian and authoritarian and evil, but that's what I want in Spire.
But when you think of your player characters in this setting, you know, they're probably going to not necessarily be from those and I mean, it doesn't even sound like that would be a playable character race or a culture would be the uppers.
No, probably not.
Because they would never get along. I don't think you could ever necessarily come up with a great reason why they would sully themselves to go anywhere but where they are. You know, I could see them being in charge and saying, hey, I got this mission for you. This is what you guys are going to do. Kind of a thing, but you know,
I think they would be very much
of Spire.
Yeah,
you know, plus they would stick out. You know, it didn't matter what you do.
I mean, if you're a beautiful like 6'6", like both men and women are like perfectly amazing height, perfect like shape, everything, you'd stick out like a sore thumb because everyone else, there's no cybernetics on these people either, at least not visually.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they can grow back limbs. They don't need cybernetic ones. They can just grow new ones.
Or their cybernetics are so advanced it literally
Yeah.
does look like their limb. I mean, I think of like, you know, you think of like those sci-fi shows where, you know, their prosthetics are literally, or bionics are literally look just like a human.
Perhaps like this is sort of an area of myth as well for the sort of lower levels. Like, are these people even human? You know, or are they just robot like AI?
That would be an awesome twist. Is that they're actually the total opposite. They have no cybernetics, and they live just off of their reputation that they've established for themselves over so long. It's like one of those things that they're really actually aren't that superior in that way. I think
just
it's really
like
good.
Genetically superior, whatever that means.
Right. Well, they're like what's his face there? Khan from the Star Trek series. You know, his people were genetically engineered to be stronger, smarter, you know, faster, better at almost anything that a normal human could. But what always happens is when you breed someone like that, at least that's always the thing, is, well, do you breed in conscience, empathy, you know, compassion? Are those things lost in that process?
No, I like these sort of. I like where this is going. So much more, and when it's like maybe 2 weeks time, I can actually start like writing on this proper. So, because I have like a bunch of assignments will be finished in a couple of weeks, and then I have a month off where I can just write. Perfect. I can't wait for that. So yeah, expect more in the next couple of weeks.
Perfect.
Maybe expect some documents as well.
That'd be also nice too, Harry. I know you like to dabble in the mapping. It'd be nice if you, in your time, if you could, we could maybe look at a map that you've made. And
mapping cities, man. That is the hardest thing. I mean, I've drawn. You know, you've seen my random like paintings and and I had like a I don't know. It's sort of changing. Like, I have an idea of how things will go, but then I think actually mapping it is going to be extremely difficult. And that's such a maze of buildings and layers upon layers and layers and layers. So it's probably impossible to map.
Well, that sounds like we have a video for next time. We can talk about how are things laid out, and we could, as we're chatting, pull it up and just, you know, it wouldn't be like, oh, and here's the prosthetic shop and here's the stem shop. It wouldn't be mapping like that, but it's really like, you know, what sort of zones. And I'm thinking more general. If I look at like, you know, if you look at big city maps on
here's a preview.
Right.
Wow. There's my preview. And I just noticed a big spelling mistake down here. It's meant to be flooded, but this has probably changed quite a bit, but
I actually like it. Old Flood City. I like that.
Yeah, Old Flood City could be a name. Anyway, this was like, and then these outskirts where all the sort of factories, and then it builds up to these big corporate towers, and then this sort of like zone here is sort of tunnels, and it's just an underground city by itself. Then that opens down this big area under here.
Yeah,
where all of the waste is just pumped down.
It's just dropped down. I love
it. And then reclaimed by the scrappers over here.
Yep.
And then we mustn't forget that living in this scrapland are the dregs as well. So they live in this scrap, live off it, and they're sort of degraded, I guess, become a little bit more tribal and have developed their own sort of language. They've just been down there for hundreds of years, just living off scrap. It's almost like that sort of post-apocalyptic feel. But anyway,
I love it. I love that map.
I need to think about other things. And then obviously my original picture, which I'm still really loving, with like another side view, but a little bit more artsy. which will probably be the thumbnail, but yeah. Right. Well, I think we've made a couple of awesome factions there. No names for them, as usual. So if you have some, I'd like to steal them, so please put some down in the comment below.
not just steal them, Harry, but we totally give credit to anybody that comes up with some nice names for these factions. That would be great.
Yeah, I'll make sure to write down your name. There was a great, thinking of stealing names, I think Marquise put a post up the other day about rogue names, like alternate names for rogues, and it was Roach, which I just adored as a name, like an alternate name for a rogue. So
I didn't read through that whole one, but I definitely love to give names to rogues that are more fitting to what they practically do versus generic thief or
I might have to just sort of take that. Because there's I'm not going to have like hacking or anything in my game anymore. Taking it out, it doesn't fit. But rogues definitely fit. So it might just be that I rename the rogue Roach and just keep it as is. So we'll see. I love the name Roach. I will find the person who wrote that and write their name and ask them if I can steal that idea. But yeah, anyway, you think you need to head off? So
yeah, I gotta run off to work.
Yep. Thanks for watching, everyone. Comment down below if you've got any ideas or just anything you want to add. Like if you did like this video. Dislike if you didn't. Anything. It's great. So yeah, we'll catch you next time. Keep watching Lionel's awesome Middle Earth stuff. Yeah, catch you next time.
All right. See you, everybody.